these teams have been able to, or not able to deal with Sanguine has been critical for them.
Well, part of the problem with Sanguine and a Teldazar is that you have to abuse so many of those snap points when you're in a Teldazar, and whenever you're snapping all the mobs on top of each other, that means you're getting multiple pools of Sanguine on top of each other, which means if you don't unsnap at the exact right time, you're going to get a lot of healing. But it looks like we're ready to go in the Siege of Boralus, so
all right. Perplexed and Method EU in the upper finals. Let's get to it. The wait is over. Siege of Boralus is here.
Joined by Tattles, I'm Gratis, of course, casting our game today. We have Divine Field pre-popping that N'Zoth Psychic Shell trinket for this mount run, jumping off the mount, landing the Thunderclap, and doing the Lightfoot Potion here. Now on a pretty similar strategy. Actually, it looks like they're maybe melding on Now's side, whereas Divine Field yeeting all the way through here as fast as humanly possible, or night elfily possible, as the case may be.
Huh. Okay, so that's the difference in the Rogue and the Demon Hunter right there, is the fact that they were able to they were trying to group meld it off. Divine Field ends up paying because he's just a little bit too close to some of the trash. Oh, more people are in combat on the side of Perplexed!
No. That's not good. That's very bad, actually. That's the exact opposite of how that's supposed to look. Unfortunately, it looks like Swagshot is safely out of combat. He will be able to go in Engineering Res Zamok, and they will be able to get a Mass Res off of that, but this must have cost them almost a minute, probably. Meanwhile, Method EU, they had that Rogue available, so they were able to meld earlier in their skip, and then they were able to Shroud for the rest of the skip. And
Zalia goes down.
Oh, Zalia actually goes down. Raging is active here, and I think a
6-second bursting
may have gone off.
Oh! All right, well, easy.
They are going to have to commit a battle res to this as well, though, because they didn't have Zalia is their only real res out of combat. So both teams have committed their battle res in this first area. Method EU has used their Bloodlust, and Perplexed has just used theirs as well. They're on this trash pool in the same spot. But Perplexed maybe about 40 seconds behind, I'd say, here, as the Method EU moves into the first boss fight up against Chopper Redhook, the Alliance first boss. Slightly different than the Horde first boss, actually. Has most of the same mechanics, but a couple of small tweaks in behavior that is a little bit interesting to watch always.
Yeah, he's also way thicker.
Definitely one of the thickest bosses that we have available here in Battle for Azeroth, although nothing on some of the earlier bosses of the game's history, you know, Patchwork in particular.
Brawl the Gluttonous is real thick, too.
Yeah, Brawl might be a contender for thickest boss of BFA, for sure.
All right, anyways.
I think Unbound Abomination might take the cake, though. That's a fantastic boss model.
Get me out of this conversation. All right, so Perplexed also on to Chopper Redhook. Like Dratnos was saying, they're probably about 40 seconds behind, plus like the 20-second penalty for deaths. Whereas Method U only has that 1 5-second penalty for deaths. Chopper Redhook does, in fact, end up going down for them. They are moving on to place some more of this trash. So it looks like they're actually going to be doing the Commander plus this Wave Shaper over here. Actually, there's a bunch of Marauders. They ended up not grabbing that Commander yet.
Yeah, this pull presumably setting up, it's not a big pull in and of itself, but needs to be taken care of so that they can advance through the dungeon here. Their Shroud isn't available, and they're not deciding to do something else with this. In fact, this is a little bit slower than I was expecting as well. I would have expected them to pull those two groups together, but maybe they found that to be a little bit too lethal with Bursting and Raging active at the same time.
They could have been behind in time. So, like, whenever Zalia ended up dying, they had to waste a few seconds to look to Engineering Res him, and the Patrol may have just not been in the correct spot for where it normally would be.
That could well be it, yeah, because if it's too far along there, you'd get the Iron-Tide Raider along with that pull, and that mob, particularly with Raging active, can be really, really deadly.
Yeah. Something also important to note is that while there is 2 Mistweaver monks, they are both running Conflict and Strife, so Way of the Crane is going to be a large source of their healing. Way of the Crane can be good if used to be able to heal through Bursting, but sometimes it's really hard to continue to, like, DPS into mobs as they're dying, so, like, maybe they mismatch pack health. Swagshot, you're in the water. Do not get eaten.
What was that? That was creative there. That was an Olympic dive into the water there. I'm going to give that a 10.
Give that an 8.
All right. The Perplexed actually catching up a little bit here, I'd say.
Yeah.
Looks like they're maybe down to just a 30-second disadvantage here as they are doing the pull just behind where Method EU is. Both teams on pretty much the exact same path so far. How do you think that the difference is going to be between the Rogue composition and the Demon Hunter here for Perplexed?
I ultimately think the difference in the Rogue and the Demon Hunter composition actually comes near the Hadal room area with how they're moving around. Like, I believe Frag will actually end up tricksing now and start gathering mobs for him at some points, which makes it significantly easier, where Divine on the side of Perplex has to just group all of the mobs himself. I think that's where some of the time disparity actually ends up coming from, not exactly necessarily the damage output. Obviously, that Shroud that we saw earlier was a little bit safer as opposed to the full Night Elf thing, but that's, at the end of the day, not exactly going to be a time saver loss.
The Night Elf thing should have worked too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
in theory, it should work as well.
All right, we see Method EU working here through some bursting stacks, able to survive it as they deal with this pull right before the bridge. They are soon going to be moving on to the second boss, Dread Captain Lockwood, with some of the trash right in front of her, if I had to guess. Perplexed, again, about a pull behind here. Let's see if they opt for the same strategy here or if they are sneaking through. Looks like they might be doing some sneaking around here because their hunters are both in camouflage.
Yes.
Okay, they're just camouflaging to get into position, I suppose. They are now pulling that back.
Huh.
Camouflage does also come with a hot on oneself as well, so that can be useful for surviving bursting, I suppose.
Here comes the darkness out on the 7 stack of bursting there, as all the mobs got just almost instantly deleted, so that was a good use of the darkness there. Just making sure that Zamok's healing is not exactly the most challenging thing, because they used both of their turtles at a different point. They used both of their turtles whenever they killed the Marauder in the previous pack with the spotter. So now they're taking this commander, they're getting him into position here, and then they're going to... They look like they're setting up some paralyses, I guess, and some traps here to kind of separate this pullout. I wonder what the point would be. So like they're doing the Cannoneer by itself. I bet they end up taking all this trash straight into the boss, whereas on the side of Method EU, they did not have as much of finesse, and they're just running straight into the pack.
Yeah, Method EU dealt with, I think, the Cannoneer and the boss at the same time, whereas Perplex decided to deal with the Commander and the Cannoneer at the same time, so... Either way, the same sort of number of pulls, and that Commander actually still alive on the side of Perplexed. But yeah, Method EU has dealt with that first intermission phase, and they are now going to try and kill Dread Captain Lockwood. It is a fortified setting that we're in right now, so it's very much possible that they can get this down without her ever returning to her boat. Meanwhile, Perplexed, on basically the same boss health when she goes to that first intermission, are going to have to deal damage to that Cannoneer in order to get her off the boat. Method EU opening up, I'd say, maybe
they got it.
A little bit here. Yeah, very close.
Yeah, that was super tight.
Close.
So on the side of Perplex, something that you may have saw is Zamok ended up dropping his Ring of Peace, and the reason for that is because you can bounce Dread Captain Lockwood off of the Ring of Peace, and it will cancel her escape cast or delay it for a few seconds, so it allows you to get a couple extra globals worth of damage, especially if the damage check is tight on Dread Captain Lockwood. Method EU, though, didn't look like they had too many problems just with how they were able to single target all the way through it. So this is going to be on Perplex here. If they get another phase on Lockwood, then that's going to be costly.
Yeah, I mean, either way, they are behind, but that would cost them maybe 30 seconds or 45, which that's a lot of seconds when you're playing up against Method EU. Looks like they are going to be able to get this, though. The energy bar is what we're comparing to the health bar here. Health bar going to hit 0% right before that energy bar fills up, and they will be able to get out of this boss fight without too much extra time lost there, making their way to that same obelisk that Method EU is just about finished with killing. Samrak, Mechanor of Chaos, the Fear guy in there. And 4 members of the team now are going to move through, whereas the tank now is going to jump out of the realm. Yep. And he's going to make his own way to Hadal's room, where he will then start boss combat, and that will yoink all 4 of the other members back into the real world as well. You can see now right there. He has that orange marker on top of his head. He's running all the way through. He's actually not in that void realm with everybody else, so he's going to be looking. If you see on screen, he pressed his meld, and now he's going to be looking to pull Hadal, like he was saying. Miraz and Gingy are getting their traps, freezing traps in place to trap some of the mobs that are on the outside of the room, because they don't want to pull them with Hadal. So yeah, snipers, very deadly mobs that won't even come into the middle of this pull here, so they won't die.
Exactly. So they're waiting. They're going to pull them in later whenever they get a little bit more advantage, or maybe they end up like meld. Okay, so they're positioning themselves to where they can pull those snipers in a little bit. Perplexed doing something very similar to the strategy that we've seen from Method EU here. Killing Samrak. I assume Divine is going to do something the exact same as what we saw from now. Look, Divine right there on the left side of the screen. He leaps over. He instantly fears all those mobs. He is light footing all the way through. Then he is going to look to meld off all of the combat from all of those trash mobs so that they will be okay. And then from there, he will attack Hadal, pull his group out of the realm, and then they will be in a similar position as where Method EU is. The bursting here can be very dangerous, though.
Yeah, bursting always a huge threat, especially if it lines up with any of the boss AoE damage. You know, this boss does quite a bit of damage when those swirlies explode. And if that lines up with a 7 stack of bursting, or if it comes after the healer has expended all of their resources against that healing, then that can be really, really deadly. But it looks like Method EU are probably going to be okay here. They do have those 2 commanders, which have that trample cast that can stun and be a problem. But you know, most of the trash here is dead. Most of the bursting threat is handled. They should be okay here as long as they can keep dealing with this boss. Yeah, the boss is pretty low on health here. Should be all right for Method EU. Meanwhile, Perplexed, still in the hectic phase, the start of this fight against the same enemies.
Raging Monka-S. Okay, so they get a good they don't get a refresh on their bursting stacks. Everything is okay. The bolstering shouts going off, but the mobs are incredibly far away, so everything is going to be all right. Because they do not have an AoE purge, they only have that purge from Wolf Disco being on that Demon Hunter.
They have the 2 Hunter pet purges as well.
That is true. Yeah.
So they actually have quite a lot of tools to deal with a couple of bolstering shots that go out, but not an AoE one. So when there's 10 mobs, it's still a little too much.
Well, the pet purge is also the pet that has purge is also the pet that has tranquility shot as well, right?
Yeah, it's the same ability that purges both an enrage and a magic effect.
Okay, interesting. So, okay, yeah, Method EU downs Hadal. Perplexed here is probably going to be downing Hadal within the next...
Ooh, Perplexed has a tough... Look at that brutal wave overlap they had where all the safe spot was pretty much covered by ice there.
That was very scary.
You hate to see that. They managed to find a safe spot, though. That is a very lethal overlap, potentially. Meanwhile, Method EU, though, making their way down towards the spotter area. They are going to enrage that spotter and then use it to kill a bunch of the pirates in this area at once. We'll see if they're able... Really, this is a fight against time. You know, it's a fight about landing a couple of those swirlies, a couple of those artillery barrages from the first set, and not having to deal with these mobs for too long, right?
I believe it takes 2 or 3 of the artillery barrages from this spotter on this 19 setting to be able to kill all of this trash. All right, so here comes the sighted artillery. You see everybody...
all of the members of their group right in the middle of the pack.
Exactly.
There. That's exactly what you want to do, because no matter who it targets, it would have been okay there. Nobody was standing out at range to be a potentially bad target. 2 turtles come out to completely immune those bursting stacks.
Yep.
Cloak comes out from Fragment, so only now Zelia had to deal with those 11 stacks of bursting, and 2 people with 11 stacks of bursting is not all that bad at all for a Mistweaver. They are going to move on now to a Demolisher, and some more pirates here, beautifully executed from Method EU. That's the Method EU that we know from previous seasons of the MDI. Incredibly great play from them.
Perplexed doing something very similar. They're waiting for that commander or the Demolisher to walk away. They're dropping their Ring of Peace. They're trying to get everything in position. They have their sighted artillery come out just a little bit early, so Divine is going to have to face tank these mobs for a few moments, let the next sighted artillery come out, get everything grouped up. They're using binding shots on the side of Perplexed to try to get everything ready. Here comes the sighted artillery. They're going to use Shockwave, presumably a couple of turtles, maybe a... I can't tell if their Demon Hunter's running Netherwalk. Their Demon Hunter does not look like he's running Nether. You're just going to have to heal through a couple of stacks of that. Perplexed, also incredibly clean pull.
Yeah, Perplexed looking good here as well. They are doing this exact same strategy here, but Method EU is ahead in terms of time right now. Method EU, 95% on enemy forces here. They're going to finish off that spotter, and they are going to make their way to Vikgoth, where they will secure the last little bit of enemy forces they need from the awakened lieutenants that will be spawning in at the start of that boss fight.
You know what's funny about this? They actually play 3 awakened mobs. And so if you are unfamiliar with Siege of Boralus, only 2 awakened mobs spawn on that near side platform for some reason. The Spider, the caster Voidweaver Malthier, which is the hardest one to move, actually spawns on the back left platform, so you're going to have to see them getting kicks to be able to deal with that. Zamak goes down the side of Perplexed.
Zelia goes down for Method EU to the barrage, the RP barrage from Vikgoth.
That's unlucky.
That is not what you want to see.
Yeah.
They're going to recover, though.
Oh, Divine! Oh, Divine goes down.
Even inside the life cocoon there. I think they might have pulled a couple of extra enemies there by accident, because I see 2 Demolishers in that pull. I'm not sure if they intended to get that second one. They're going to try and recover this pull, but things are going bad on the side of Perplexed. Meanwhile, Method EU, into that very last boss fight, they are using their second Bloodlust here against this. Moving over after the first Gripping Tentacle is down, and they are now good on the DPS check. They just have to finish off the Demolishing Terror, and then they can kill these 3 awakened enemies pretty much at their leisure.
Exactly. So they don't fire the cannon. So if you fire the cannon, then the extra Demolishing Terror and Gripping Tentacle would spawn, and you really don't want that to happen, so they're biding their time. Zelia is just going to have to heal through these debuffs from Vikgoth, while just the rest of the group is trying to kill off all 3 of these obelisk mobs. So this is actually a really good strategy from the side of Method EU.
Meanwhile, Perplexed is going to dismiss pets and then Shadow Meld to remove combat from that extra Demolisher, and they are going to go down to Vikgoth themselves here. In order to win, though, they are probably going to need Method EU to have some difficulties on this boss fight, or Wolf Disco is going to have to pull out some insane Demon Hunter DPS that Method EU does not have access to, of course, with their Rogue instead.
I didn't know. Was it going to become 2 DPS?
Maybe. I don't know.
So right here, Method EU, as long as they are able to just get through this Dark Fury cast and like these couple Awakened mobs,
they've actually started the timer on this next platform while Awakened mobs are still up because they know they can deal with it.
That's the
aggressive efficient cleave.
Yeah, that's the best optimization. They got Blood of the Corruptor down just a little bit early. They were cleaving off of it and decided that as soon as that mob dies, the way that you save seconds is by just instantly firing that cannon as soon as you can.
And they're now onto the Gripping Terror. Getting in combat with the Gripping Terrors on the second and third platform is what starts the timer for the second and beyond Demolishing Terrors.
Exactly.
To spawn, so they want to do as much damage to this as possible. Try and beat that Demolishing Terror spawn. If one spawns, it's not the end of the world. But if that second one spawns afterwards, then they can start to be in trouble. That's the first one, though, that spawned. And so they are going to be okay up against that. Meanwhile, Perplexed also on the second platform. They have got all three of their Awakened enemies still alive, though. Blood of the Corruptor going down. Let's see if they decide to shoot the cannon right now as well.
So now is actually going to be firing the cannon on the side of Method U. He's going to wait for all of his friends to get over to the other side. Then he's going to Lightfoot all the way across and make his way towards that Demolishing Tentacle, while the rest of his group mates are just burning down that Gripping. That's the way that they save so much damage in order to be able to kill the Gripping in one round before they need to even kill that Demolishing, is just by now firing the cannon.
Yeah, because that Demolishing Terror isn't going to start casting that Hull Cracker until it's done its first slam, so there's a little bit of wiggle room for them to have, to get over there a little bit later, and that's going to mean that they can kill this Gripping Terror, and once they fire this cannon, that will be the end of this dungeon.
Whew, this was so close and so clean by both of these teams. Sure, Perplexed had some issues at the very beginning with their Shroud and their Meld skips. Great run by both teams, though, honestly.
Taking game number 1 in the series, and this just really goes to show how polished they really can be. And even though Method EU did have that 15:08 time in time trials, they were a little bit behind on that end. It was really Perplexed just having their own mistakes and really not being able to clean up a lot of their play there.
And really uncanny mistakes to that end as well. Like, not having somebody shadow meld at the proper time in the very first, section of the dungeon. It's really weird. Like, maybe they were just overthinking. Maybe they were a little bit nervous because they're actually going up against, what we would assume is their main competition in this tournament. But you kind of have to think of these dungeons as a super long progression fight. And sometimes when you're in a progression raid and you just start wiping in phase 1 randomly, that's kind of the equivalent of what these guys did. Now, the real show of how good of a team they are and what their veteran stature would be is how well they're going to come back in this second dungeon. I'm looking for Perplexed to really come out firing in this next dungeon.
Yeah, and we've already seen how they've banned, for example, Waycrest Manor. So Shrine of the Storm, Dranos, is really just such heavy execution dungeon that we've already seen Perplexed play on this weekend.
Yeah, Perplexed had a 19-minute and 43-second Shrine with only one death coming out against Sanguine Shrine of the Storm. That's a pretty impressive number, but we have no idea what Method EU's number is like in there. It wasn't a time trial dungeon, and Method EU has not yet played that dungeon. So this will be an unknown for us. We'll get to see what composition they choose to bring, whether they decide to focus on Death Knights or not, and then how fast they can get that in there. If they can get under the 20-minute mark as well, and if they can even beat Perplexed's previous time of 19 minutes and 43 seconds.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Zyro, wasn't Perplexed the one who actually had the super easy one phase on the boss as well? They just completely obliterated Volsith at the very end.
Yeah, it wasn't even close, and the healer didn't have the damage buff for most of that either, so
That's
it can
right.
definitely be done incredibly quickly.
Yeah, there's already a lot of potential for these guys to just absolutely take it away. So, but first, let's start breaking down some of those mistakes that we saw on the side of Perplexed there.
Yeah, it's really hard to kind of focus in on what these teams were doing wrong. Obviously, Perplexed had a mistake with the Shadow Meld, and they had a couple deaths later on in the dungeon. But what I really want to focus on is what sets these teams apart from each other. Just the small execution things that they do. This pull right after the finished off all of Hadal's room, which was impressive in and of itself, just shows the control they have over their mobs. They cleave down that spotter pack, get the cleaver into that raging range where it does double damage, and then they can use that raging spotter to pretty much cleave down the rest of the trash in the dungeon that they need. They started, I believe, at the end of Hadal, they were at 56% trash percentage, and they got literally all the rest of the trash they needed minus the awakened mobs just from that one raging spotter. These guys have excellent mob control, and they know exactly what they're doing to get through this dungeon as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and a lot of times we just saw some extremely precise execution, especially Dranos when they got into Hadal's room to begin with. Having part of the team, for example, setting traps, setting crowd control, and being able to round up everything there. We saw how it wiped the Doppler effect and how much damage they had to deal with rolling, bursting. Right there, it was just absolute textbook on Method EU side.
Yeah, the bursting control, the turtles when the bursting's coming out, pre-placing those traps in Nyalotha, and then knowing that when you get pulled out to the real world, the traps will still be there and will immediately trap the snipers under them. Excellent play coming out from Method EU, doing that room flawlessly, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that always comes out is how people are having their cooldowns together. Because remember, in previous tournaments, we've had interviews with Method EU in particular, Tettles, and they talked about how they practice these dungeons so robotically that they always know what cooldowns they have back.
Yeah, I mean, and teams have talked about it before. They actually just, like, whenever you're in voice, they don't even call kicks. Like, they actually just know which kick that they're going to get on certain mobs. I mean, I'm sure they're calling it on, like, Void Weaver Mouth-Ear, because that's, like, kind of hard to rotate 4 kicks without talking.
No,
but
Void Weaver Mouth-Ear, you can just get the weak aura, the little...
True, exactly.
Weak aura, yeah.
I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
You set up stuff like that, and ultimately, it is robotic. There are very precise things assigned, and during the runs, they have to say very little because everybody's on the same page and everybody knows what role they have to play.
I think that also is more of a testament as to how long they've been playing together, is ironic.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just communication and knowing what someone means when they say something. Like, usually when you're in a dungeon, like Dratnos mentioned, your communication is kept to a minimum. You're usually only talking to each other in some dire case where somebody's missed a kick or missed a cooldown and you need a backup stun from one of the DKs, or maybe you need a little bit of extra kiting, or maybe you need a taunt from one of the melee DPS as well. It really comes down to synergy, and I would assume that a team like Method EU, and honestly Perplexed as well, with their time being Abracadabra last year as well, they just have that synergy down to the point where if there is a small mistake going on, they know how to fix it almost instantly.
That's right, and you're going to see the map pool as we get ourselves ready for game number 2 in the series. Boralus was won, once again, by Method EU, and we'll be moving on to Shrine of the Storm, where Perplexed is going to look to get back in this series, because after that, a Taldazar is going to be going on as well. And again, both of these dungeons, these next couple dungeons, are going to be with Sanguine, with Fortified, and there's going to be tons of pressure for both of these teams to watch how they kite and watch how they start utilizing some snap spots. In particular, having some of the different positions of grabbing all of the initiates together before the second boss.
Exactly. There is a snap spot, like notably in Shrine of the Storm, like Jack was alluding to, that you can snap all of the initiates to, and then Sanguine drops to the very bottom of the water. That's like a unique thing with how Sanguine ends up working out. It goes straight to the bottom if you are in any like elevated surface, such as water. We see it in Shrine of the Storm used heavily on live. We also see it in dungeons like Toldagor, where the mobs just will not heal. So utilization of that, just Sanguine management in general, very important for teams to not just lose a ton of time on.
Oh yeah, we got our diving suits ready a week ago, 2 weeks back or something like that to be able to get it. But enough of that, we're underway as Shrine of the Storm is ready to go, as Perplexed needs this win to stay in the running for the upper finals.
Once again, we are seeing Method EU coming out with that rogue, whereas Perplexed is elected to again not play any rogue in their composition at all. So we have Swag on the Hunter versus Gingy on the Rogue. Both teams, though, are playing a double Death Knight composition and are both doing a pretty similar big pull here at the start to make use of those Death Knights in big AoE.
Well, I think most of the time the difference in the Hunter and the Rogue is like the tricks versus the misdirection. But like if you don't need a massive amount of threat via the misdirection, you only need it to snap mobs that are out of combat, then the misdirection is just fine, even though it generates less threat because most of the Hunter's damage is not through them, it's through their pet.
Yeah, I would kind of describe it as the difference between Shroud and like a little bit more damage, and which of those is going to be more useful for your team.
Sure.
But, you know, there are some other pieces of rogue utility that are really nice. You know, extra interrupts, gouges and stuff can also facilitate bigger pulls and provide more support for the DKs who are probably going to do all the damage you need anyways.
I do absolutely agree here. Rogues also, like the full tricks value for double Death Knight also allows now to hold threat a little bit easier if he is in fact struggling with that for some reason. We actually do see Bloodlust coming out inside of Method EU on Accuseer. Perplexed used it on their first pull. Unfortunately, had a little bit of Sanguine healing that set them behind a few seconds. So I assume that Method EU is going to be killing Accuseer a little bit earlier.
Yeah, look at this though. They have to deal with Sanguine during a boss fight that is rooted. So if they get Sanguine under this boss, things will be bad for a while. Looks like they're doing a good job though of not having that happen. Meanwhile, Perplexed playing a much less aggressive strategy into this boss. They are not pulling trash with it, besides some neutral droplets, until
Here comes
it does
everything.
its first teleport, and now they are doing the trash into it. So maybe they were waiting for some cooldowns to recover, or maybe they've just decided that it'll be easier to wait until it does its first charge before pulling in some extra trash. Quaking comes out though, and it looks like Wolf Disco gets cleaved by another Quake and takes quite a bit of damage from it. That is the new Quaking change, Hadal. What do you think about the change to Quaking that has come out this patch?
It's a good change.
So what is the difference between this and old Quaking?
It no longer does damage to you unless you are stacked up on top of other players. So effectively, if you play it correctly, you should not take any damage from it.
Right, but it does punish you more for stacking too much.
Exactly.
Right? Each person stacking is more damage, but no base damage. I agree. It's a nice change to see.
So we actually see the Sanguines being dropped out in the middle of the room for both Perplexed and Method EU. If you want to play trash with AccuStar on live, it's really not that dangerous, just as long as you make sure that you do drop the Sanguine out in the middle of the room like both of these teams are doing. In addition to that, it's really hard to Sanguine heal the boss. It has to basically be like directly underneath him. He may have a big hitbox for melees, but he has a really small hitbox for Sanguine healing. So it like I was saying, needs to be almost directly underneath him for him to be healing.
Yeah, it has to be in that like water typhoon thing in his model.
Exactly. So
Which is smaller than it looks.
For those who are playing on live, definitely something you can utilize to try to gain a little bit of time, pull a little bit of trash to the boss, because not exactly the most dangerous boss to pull those two, what are they, Tempests off to the side? The mobs that cast Tempest, I guess, are what they are. Those two are pretty free with him.
Yeah, it's pretty efficient time to pull those enemies in for sure. We can see actually some initiates coming in on the side of Perplexed. They went and pulled the initiates next to Helvis. There are a couple of sneaky ways that you can pull those without actually pulling Helvis. Meanwhile, Method EU are just going all the way through here, and they are going to be using their Shadow Melds and Vanish to drop combat. And
I wonder
skip there.
where they're going to get their count from. So they're
Guardian Elemental is being pulled, and now is actually the only
He's
person
soloing
ahead.
it. He's soloing it.
Everybody else is staying back. Yeah, now he's going to spell reflect this electrifying shock. Now the rest of the team is going to come in, and look at the Guardian Elemental just taking huge ticks of damage from that electrifying shock spell reflect.
I love the
That is
strategy.
massive.
So, for those who don't know, the electrifying shock is a dot, and it can be spell reflected by the prot warrior. So all four members were waiting in the very back to just wait for the first electrifying shock to go off. Then now presses spell reflect, it gets put back on him. It will end up doing like 30% of his health per application. So that's like free damage. As long as they're able to heal through the Shipbreaker Storm, which with all of these targets for Zalia's Way of the Crane, it shouldn't be any problem. This is such a good strategy by Method EU. That Guardian Elemental is 36 count as well. So, oh man, that's such a good strat.
Yeah, that's like 4 regular-sized enemies in this dungeon.
Exactly.
Which is pretty good rate given that it didn't take 4 times as long as a regular enemy to die there because of that spell reflection. Excellent play there. Now they are going to move forward and grab another fairly large pull in this area here, and they've got, I think, some DK cooldowns not available for this. So they're going to have to do this the old-fashioned way with Prot Warrior and Rogue damage carrying way for them.
Perplexed is actually not that far behind. They had Zamaka go down, so they ended up using their battle res there for a couple seconds. But like they're really not that far behind in time.
Yeah, they're actually ahead in enemy forces as well here. So they've pulled more trash at the start of the dungeon, and they're moving through it with a different skip here. So they're going to skip that Guardian Elemental. They're all going to move through and meld here.
Yep.
So they have a different answer about which trash is best to pull, which is great to see. It's great when teams have come up with different answers for what the best route is through the dungeon. That really makes you feel like there's a lot of game to it.
Yeah. Okay, so there goes the snap from Perplexed. So they're snapping all of the mobs off onto that little ledge there to get all the initiates grouped up as quickly as possible. Then they're going to blast them in the corner of the room, probably before they end up fleeing in terror, and then pull all the iron holes and the tendons off of all of that Sanguine healing. This is where the kiting is like super important in the Sanguine management, is most of the time what we're talking about, because those initiates have such low health. So they're fleeing away in terror, so if they can die before they make it back to the pack...
Look at the Binding Shot come out now. Binding Shot's something that Perplexed has access to, but Method EU does not, and they're going to be able to use that to keep one side of the initiates from getting back in. The other ones almost make it back in, but they don't actually Sanguine heal anything. Divine Field, though, having a very difficult time of both surviving
Nice grip.
and doing Sanguine management at the same time here. Has to stand in a couple of abilities there. Quake comes out, players cleave each other. Ooh, that's very dangerous. They are going to be alright, though. Just barely. Meanwhile, Method EU doing a large pull into the boss.
Don't heal the boss.
Into
Don't
the
heal the
boss
boss.
with Sanguine active. That is very, very treacherous. They need to be so careful to avoid killing anything under the boss. But look at those blood of the enemies come out. And look at that Death Knight damage.
A little bit late on the ring, but nothing gets healed.
Yeah. There is a little bit of a delay between the blood applying and the heal. So great move there from Method EU. Handling the Sanguine there for all those initiates, and that has really fed into the Death Knight damage that we're seeing on this pull.
So,
But they have to be careful. Brother Ironhull almost getting healed from the Ironhull Apprentice, dying and dropping Sanguine. That would have been fitting, I guess.
I don't know if you caught it, but Method EU actually played one of the obelisks. They played Samrek Beckoner of Chaos there, while Perplexed was still doing their big snap in the corner. So that is something that is a little bit different. Perplexed at 57% enemy forces count, Method U at 55%, but Method U is about 20-ish% ahead on the boss. This is incredibly close, holy moly.
Yeah, I imagine that Perplexed will be going back and activating that obelisk for themselves after this boss fight. That's been what we've seen most teams do, and I think that's what Perplexed did in their previous Shrine of the Storm run, because that is a particularly dangerous enemy to fight with Volzith in this place. So I imagine that they are actually behind by a little bit more than just the percentage on the boss, because they are going to go back and do that same pull. But they have a little bit more enemy forces percent, so they might be able to do a smaller amount of pulls or a safer pull later in the dungeon as a result of that.
Exactly. I mean, Samrek is very scary with Volzith because that healer has reduced HP, and basically the fears from Volzith are unavoidable, except for via Dispel, which would remove your damage amplifier buff that you gain. Of course, we saw Zamakin in this dungeon yesterday. He doesn't even need it. Like, they were able to one-phase the boss without the buff, so maybe they're going to not play Samrek with... they're not going to play Samrek right now. Either way, Method EU is going to be downing Brother Ironhull and Galecaller Fae probably in the range of like 10 seconds ahead of Perplexed here.
Yes, and they are going to move on now to presumably a Shadow Meld skip through this part of the dungeon. Ooh, Ginji, though, getting ready on the side here. Maybe to do a Shroud, or maybe they're actually going to pull some of these mobs here.
Okay,
Get some count from these.
Okay.
Okay, so what they're doing is they are going to kill off the skeletons here, because those are pretty easy to kill, and you get some free count pretty quickly from that. And then they're going to end up skipping, I think, the rest of these after those skellies go down.
Yeah, so...
Maybe they're just grouping everything up, and maybe they're going to AoE it all down. I don't know. I don't know what to think anymore, Tellus.
I thought they were killing the Skellies too, but I think you're right. Maybe they were just kiting the Enforcers to make sure that they were stacked up and everything else was going to be okay. Ooh, everything is going down incredibly quickly once they drop those D&Ds.
Yeah, of course, one nice thing about getting the Enforcers all at the same time is that you can synchronize a Spell Reflect back onto them and hit all of them at once with their own smash.
Exactly.
And if you do that, you take a lot less damage and they take a lot more damage. That is a nice bonus of doing it that way.
So Perplexed here fighting Samrek Beckoner of Chaos after they end up pulling some trash off to the side. Post Brother Ironhull and Galecaller Fae. They're positioning like they're about to move Samrek all the way through, not using all of their melds and whatnot. They're going to be saving them for later on in the instance, presumably whenever they are going to be getting towards that tentacle area.
I'm not sure if they're going to do that. I think what they did last time was just kill Samrek kind of in this area, and then just do a meld skip anyways, because then they can mount up. But they might have changed that. Yeah, you might be right. Samrek pretty low though. I think that it's going to.
Yeah, it looks like they're just killing him.
End of the path.
Yeah, so Samrek moves incredibly slow, so it's not exactly time efficient for you to like wheel him all the way through. If you do have a full Night Elf team, most people in live don't exactly have access to that, so it can be kind of costly though. Method EU is doing an enormous pull on the bridge here. I think that's like 4 Depthbringers and a bunch of cultists there. The Depthbringer is notoriously dangerous because they cast an ability called Void Bolt.
So I think they've gotten the 2 cultists from the start, the ones that come with those tendies. They got in combat with them, dropped combat with them, and then used Ring of Peace, I believe, to separate them from the tendies, and now they're fighting those 2 extra cultists without the 2 tendies that accompany them to get just a little bit more count here. And yeah, as you can see, the fact
that's
that they use Ring
healing.
of Peace for that is going to cause a problem in this part, though.
Yeah.
That is unfortunate.
The cultists just end up standing, bathing in that Sanguine, taking a bloodbath. That's
right, and look, Ring of Peace still on cooldown from its use earlier there. I think that's going to end up costing them more time than it saved them.
I think I concur, because it's basically 18 count for the use of Ring of Peace, where it doesn't allow them to actually get the mobs out of the Sanguine healing.
Meanwhile, we can see Perplexed lands that Ring of Peace against the Sanguine.
One grip.
And yeah, they need grips on these 2 cultists, but I think their grips might be on cooldown, so that is going to cause them a little bit of Sanguine healing there, but nowhere near as much time lost as Method EU did.
I mean, now
in position
now
to
the match is
activate this
even.
obelisk.
Look.
Yeah, the match is pretty close here, although Perplexed even a little bit ahead on enemy forces count.
Yeah.
They're getting ready now to go through. It looks like only Swag is going to be getting in combat here with these enemies, and the rest of the
Oh, the Void Bolts go off. Okay, he ends up
through.
dead. He's chilling. No, not dangerous. No monk S.
Well, a little dangerous.
Okay, very scary. All right, so
it would scare me at least.
that would kind of freak me out too. All right, so both of these teams, 78% enemy forces count. They're both on the Abyssal Eels here. Man, we got a match.
They are neck and neck here. Now we have one death on the side of Perplexed. That is a 5-second advantage in the favor of Method EU, but 5 seconds is not the end of the world here. These teams are absolutely neck and neck. Impossible to tell who's going to win from here.
Yeah, so you actually did see both teams as well starting the RP to summon Lord Stormsong, so that's going to be a few seconds advantage as well, so you don't have to just like sit there awaiting the cast. Whew.
And now we see Perplexed entering the Lord Stormsong Gamer Spa Resort with the jacuzzi back there for premium members. Let's see if anybody decides it's time to go take a bath in that jacuzzi when they get mind controlled. Of course, that does deal some damage and will allow them to break that very quickly.
You gotta stop. All right, so Lord Stormsong here. Both teams running Protection Warrior. If you would like, you can Spell Reflect his Void Bolt every other one, and it does a significant amount of damage to him. Also on the side of Perplexed and Method EU, they're basically praying that their healer does not get targeted with that mind control. See, look, all of those immunities get used on the side of Perplexed, but Zamak ends up getting MC'd anyways. He is a premium member at the Lord Stormsong Jacuzzi Lounge, Bath and Body Works, so he's hopping in there.
Ooh, down to 18% though in the jacuzzi. Maybe the temperature turned up a little bit too hot. Does manage to get out though before getting scalded.
Yeah, unfortunately, like you really don't want your healer to be picked there because they do use double AMS and a turtle. So if it went on any of those players, then you'd have Zamak's extra damage to be able to push you a little bit further ahead. But even still, Perplexed 10% ahead on Lord Stormsong over Method EU. That's definitely more than the 5 seconds.
Yeah, they got here just a little bit faster after clearing through the sides of Dwellers a little bit faster, I'd say. I think that might be a Beast Mastery Hunter thing here, because if we look at the damage meters, Beast Mastery Hunter's just blasting on those meters.
Yeah. So there you see Fragments actually getting mind controlled at the very end, where Zamak gets MC'd on the side of Perplexed. Perplexed is already moving their way through the water. Please don't get stunned.
Yeah, you gotta try and avoid those jellyfish. No diving suits available here on the tournament realm, unfortunately, so these players are gonna have to deal with their usual swim speed to get through this area. No druid travel form as well to sneak ahead.
Did you know?
Always does. Yeah.
Did you know that if you go into the Nyalotha realm, that there are no jellyfish here, and if you have like somebody like a druid or whatever, they can just like swim ahead in travel form, and then like all of the players can just like miss all of these eels and everything, and they don't have to worry about anything like that. They immediately get to the boss, and since the druid is so quick, then they just tag the boss that pulls everybody out of the Nyalotha realm, and that can save you a couple of seconds if you have a portal in Lord Stormsong's room. I mean, not exactly relevant here, but still a strategy.
Very cool facts, Tettles. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I love learning fun facts.
We
can see
Perplexed.
They're setting up here for a Death Knight onto the boss pool. The plan here with these eels is to use them to contribute damage on the boss from the Death Knight AoE, and that is exactly what's happening here. You can see the armies of the dead coming out, and that will be... What's happening here? Did the boss just reset? I'm not quite sure what happened there. I think it might have.
Where did the boss go?
I believe the boss has I believe Volzith the Whisperer has left the building on the side of Perplexed. That's unfortunate.
Where
on
are
the
the
side of
obelisks?
Method EU, however,
Huh.
yeah, the obelisks are still there. On the side of Method EU, they are actually on this boss fight here, fighting through Volzith and those awakened enemies. Of course, Voidweaver Malthier, they're going to have to try and kill that as quickly as possible because they do not want to have to use any interrupts on it while they're in this downstairs realm with those, Mindbender guys there.
So,
as well.
Method EU actually has Volzith about 6 or 7% lower than where Perplexed did yesterday. So I think the likely scenario is that Method EU is absolutely going to get a 1-phase on it. Mira's, Frag, and Gingy are all dropping super low, but I don't exactly know what it's from.
I believe it's casts going off from the far caster there. The far denizen in the upside down realm. That they are going to. We can actually see what's going on.
Mira's is dropping
right now.
low again.
Yeah, it does need to cast some death strikes. Maybe there's Actually, I have no idea what would be doing that either. Maybe just standing against.
Maybe they had two.
Oh, it's probably defiled ground. It's probably defiled ground taking him once.
It could very well be. I think they may have had 2 of the denizen casts go off at the same time though, which means that they missed us. Ooh, Perplexed is going down. They're gonna have a full team wipe
on the other side here. That is very, very bad for them. I think they were on pace to improve their previous best time of 19 minutes and 43 seconds. But I believe when that boss reset the first time, that was then when Method EU really got the opportunity to pounce here.
Yeah.
Method EU looks like still not having any deaths here. Most of these awakened enemies have been dealt with, although they are still both teams are still in their respective, upside down realms, and they have not quite finished dealing with the enemies in those realms. They have to actually do that fairly soon. They will run out of breath eventually.
Yeah, I mean that's intentional. They don't want to kill that last denizen because they would rather just kill Urgroth, because of how they're about to just do these middle denizens altogether.
Yeah, they don't want to get ported back out to this realm.
Exactly.
Now is going to leap away. Ooh, what's happened
Is
here?
he pulling the eels too?
I think he may be going to pull the eels, yeah. So he has aggro on that denizen, pulling some eels. Meanwhile, the rest of the comp is getting interrupts on these two denizens. They have 4 melee kicks here, so they can kick these denizens indefinitely, but they don't have an extra kick there for the boss unless they use a Death Knight pet kick.
You know what? Method U is about to one-phase this boss, but I actually know what happened with Perplexed resetting the boss. The eel, one of the eels probably got stuck in the ground, and if that happens, then the boss can force reset if the eel is actually stuck in the ground.
Yes, the eels are notoriously a little bit tricky in this area.
Exactly.
They sometimes don't exactly cooperate. There are a couple ways to play around it with how you pull them, but sometimes it just be that way.
Exactly. Ooh, Mirazins are going down. They may not get a one-phase here on the side of Method EU.
Yeah, Volzin energy climbing there, about 80% now. Health only at 20%.
Oh, Zalia
also dropping really low. Has stacks there of that Promises of Power building up, though. Is trying to do some damage. 10% health.
This boss is going to phase.
A bit of a cast time on Volzith, but I think they're actually going to have to deal with another Sunken City phase here.
There's a Sunken Denizen still alive. So currently now has to
I've been doing that as well.
deal with the multiple denizens. I was like,
At the present time, the tank of Method EU is dealing with that enemy, yes.
yes, thank you, Dretnos, for fixing my speech.
So unfortunately, that means the Sunken Denizen is currently going to reset. And we'll be at 100% health again, and does need to get killed for them to get enemy forces. So the door opening a little bit back up here for Perplexed, but Perplexed does not have combat with the boss yet. They are still going to need to pull that boss and kill it. They are also going to be full on mob count after that, though. They've done all the trash in the area. They have cooldowns now for the boss, but they don't have any eels to build damage off of for their Death Knights. So they're just going to have to do their best to kill this boss here. Meanwhile, Method U have finished that Glimpse of the Sunken City phase. They're going to pull that last boss. And once its health reaches 0, they just have to deal with the Sunken Denizen to finish the timer here. That is going to be about the same pace as Perplexed set in their run yesterday, sitting at about 19 minutes 43 seconds as Perplexed run. I think that's going to be pretty much the exact same number Method EU hits here to win this match against Perplexed.
It was just those deaths, those mistakes. We've seen it time and time again. It's ironic. That's just all it takes for sometimes in dungeons that are as precise as Shrine of the Storm.
It's a real shame to see the dungeon end that way as well, because these guys were exchanging blows throughout the dungeon. The difference between boss 1 and 2 for Method EU is their routing was so much better than Perplexed, but then between bosses 2 and 3, Perplexed managed to pull it back, and they ended up pulling the third boss at almost the exact same time, and you could see that power of the Hunter single target just pulling Perplexed ahead. And like Teddles was saying during the dungeon, I'm pretty sure what ended up happening to Perplexed there is whenever you pull those abyssal eel packs around the platform, sometimes the pathing of the eels can be a little weird. Sometimes one of them can get stuck underneath the platform, and that just happens to sometimes reset the boss. It's not 100% chance, but it's one of the risks that these teams know they're taking with this strategy. And yeah, it's unfortunate to see it happen, but it's just one of the things that can happen in this map.
That's right, and it's one of those things that's also very well known. It's how you pull those mobs in, it's how you organize them, and it was also the reason why we saw out of now waiting so long in like the shallows to grab all those eels on top of him and then run back to get the kick. It's always so important to make sure the timing is as precise as they can possibly make it onto that one, Teddles.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You just have to be really patient with those eels and let them come out of the water before you do anything. If you're tanking them on the ledge, as soon as they all reach you, then you are good to go. If you do it any earlier, then the eel pathing can just get messed up, because I think it's just like function of how water works in WoW.